When Samuel rode back to his ranch that evening, he thought the creak of the wooden door and the sigh of the old windmill would be the only sounds greeting him. He was a man of silence and habit, used to long days under the punishing sun and long nights alone in his weather-worn home. But as he stepped inside, he froze in disbelief. Sitting by the dim fire in his own living room, wrapped in a blanket she must have found in his chest, was a young Apache woman. Her hair fell long and dark across her shoulders, her face proud yet weary, and her eyes, deep with an untold story, met his with a calmness that unsettled him. Before he could ask who she was, her voice broke the still air. "I want to stay here." Samuel felt his world tilt. This was no ordinary trespass, and no ordinary request. At first, his instinct was to demand an explanation, to raise his rifle that hung on the wall and make her leave. The frontier was harsh, and strangers brought danger, especially for a man who had fought his entire life to carve out his little patch of land. But the steadiness in her gaze made him hesitate. She wasn't frightened, and she wasn't pleading, she was declaring. It was as though she had already decided that this house, this ranch, and this man were now part of her destiny. He asked her name, and after a pause, she answered softly, "Naeli." The word carried the sound of the wind over canyons, strong and unyielding, and from that moment, he felt a strange certainty that nothing in his life would ever be the same. Samuel tried to reason with her. He told her this was no place for an Apache woman, that the world outside would not tolerate her presence here. Yet Naeli only shook her head. She spoke with a quiet conviction that cut through his objections. She was tired of running, tired of hiding, and tired of watching her people be scattered and broken. She had chosen this place, not out of chance, but out of need. Her voice did not tremble, but Samuel could see the shadows of her past in her eyes, fires that had consumed villages, soldiers' boots that trampled freedom, and the loneliness of a soul searching for safety. In that moment, his heart softened, though he fought against it. He had lived too long in solitude to imagine sharing his home, and yet he could not bring himself to turn her away. The firelight flickered across her face, casting sharp lines that seemed to reveal both her fragility and her strength. Samuel realized she was young, yet carried herself with the dignity of someone far older. He poured her water, set bread and beans on the table, and watched as she ate slowly, as if each bite was part of a ceremony she dared not rush. The silence between them was not uncomfortable, it was charged with an unspoken understanding. Samuel felt as though his home, so long haunted by emptiness, was suddenly alive. The clinking of the spoon against the tin bowl sounded louder, warmer, as though the house itself welcomed her presence. Still, the weight of what her words meant pressed on him. To stay here was no small thing. An Apache woman in a white rancher's home would invite suspicion, judgment, and perhaps even violence from nearby settlers. Samuel himself was no stranger to prejudice. He knew that the world outside did not forgive such unions easily. But as he looked at her, he realized that she had come despite knowing all of this. She was willing to take the risk. The question was he? That night, Samuel lay in bed unable to sleep. He could hear her soft movements in the other room, the shifting of blankets as she made herself a place near the fire. He stared at the wooden ceiling beams, wrestling with a storm of thoughts. He remembered the years of loneliness, the ache of coming home to an empty table, the silence of the prairie pressing on him like a weight. For so long, he had believed this was his fate, to live and die as a solitary man. But now, in his home was someone who shattered that pattern with a single sentence, "I want to stay here." It was not just a request, it was an invitation to a new life, one he had never dared to dream of. By dawn, he found himself watching her again, this time in the pale morning light. She was standing outside, gazing across the fields as though already belonging to them. The rising sun caught her hair, and for a fleeting moment, she looked like part of the land itself, wild, untamed, eternal. Samuel walked out to her, his boots crunching softly on the earth. He asked her why she had chosen his home, of all the places she could have gone. Her answer was simple, "Because you are alone, and so am I. Alone, we are weak. Together, we may yet survive." The honesty of her words struck him deeper than any bullet could. As the day unfolded, Naeli began to move around the ranch as if it had always been hers. She fetched water from the well, fed the chickens, and even mended a torn saddle strap with skillful hands. Samuel watched with a mixture of awe and confusion. Each act bound her presence more firmly into the rhythm of his life. He realized that she wasn't asking for his permission to belong here, she was proving she already did. and in some quiet corner of his soul, he felt relief, as though the burden of solitude he had carried for so many years was finally lifting. Yet Samuel knew challenges loomed. Neighbors might come by, questions would arise, whispers could turn to threats. But when he looked at Nayeli, he saw no fear, only resolve. She had lived through worse storms than the judgments of settlers. And for the first time, Samuel felt the stirrings of courage he thought he had long buried. Perhaps the world would scorn them, but perhaps too, they could build something greater than fear, a life forged not by what others demanded, but by the choice they made to stand together. The rancher who had once believed himself cursed to a lonely end now faced a new beginning. It had arrived unexpectedly, without invitation, carried on the voice of a woman who walked into his home and claimed her place. And as he watched Nayeli move across his land, as natural as the wind and as steady as the mountains, he knew that the story of his life had been rewritten in a single night. She had said, "I want to stay here." And though the words had stunned him at first, Samuel found himself already hoping she never left. The next morning, Samuel saddled his horse and rode into town for supplies, but his mind was not on flour, coffee, or salt. It was on the woman who now sat in his home, waiting for him. The ride, usually steady and quiet, felt heavier that day. He knew the townsfolk, gruff, sharp-eyed, quick to gossip. He could already imagine their whispers if they learned he had taken an Apache woman into his ranch. He remembered the endless stories told around the saloon tables, ranchers losing cattle, homesteads burned, blame always thrown on Indians. Samuel had never been one to spread hate, but he knew how deep it ran in the hearts of his neighbors. And yet, for all the fear he felt, a stubborn resolve grew within him. He was not going to cast her out. She had chosen his home, and whether he admitted it aloud or not, he had already chosen her. Inside the general store, Samuel kept his head low as he gathered sacks of grain, a coil of rope, and a bundle of candles. But the storekeeper, an old man named Briggs with a nose for secrets, noticed Samuel's restless demeanor. "You look troubled," Briggs remarked, his eyes narrowing. "Something weighing heavy on your land." Samuel grunted, trying to shake off the probing words, but his hesitation betrayed him. Briggs leaned closer, lowering his voice. "I heard tell of Apache tracks near your place. You best be careful, Sam. They bring nothing but grief." Samuel's jaw tightened, but he said nothing, paid for his goods, and walked out with his heart pounding. The rumors were already moving faster than he had imagined. When he returned to the ranch, he found Nayeli waiting by the corral, her hands brushing over the horse's mane with a gentleness that surprised him. She looked at him, reading the storm in his face, and asked what had happened in town. Samuel hesitated but finally told her the truth. The people suspected, and they would not forgive him if they knew. Nayeli listened quietly, her expression unreadable, until she finally said, "I have known hatred all my life. It does not frighten me anymore. The question is, does it frighten you?" Samuel had no answer. He had faced drought, hunger, wolves, and bandits, but this was different. This was not a fight of guns or fists, it was a fight of belonging, of defying the rules of a world set against them. Days passed, and slowly, the rhythm of the ranch shifted. Samuel found himself listening to Nayeli's laughter as she hummed while working, her voice carrying a melody older than the land itself. She showed him ways of tending soil he had never known, pointing out herbs that healed wounds, roots that strengthened the body, and signs in the sky that promised rain. The ranch began to feel less like a battleground and more like a living, breathing partnership between them and the earth. Samuel, who once thought himself the master of his land, began to realize he was its student, and Nayeli its teacher. Yet even in this quiet transformation, a shadow lingered. He knew the day would come when someone would see her, and everything would change. It was Briggs's nephew, a restless young man with too much liquor in his veins, who first caught sight of Nayeli. Samuel had been out mending a fence when the rider came too close to the property line. From a distance, he saw the glint of her hair as she carried water from the well, and his shout of surprise echoed across the fields. Samuel rode hard to cut him off, but it was too late. The young man's eyes gleamed with the kind of mischief that could turn deadly once it reached the wrong ears. "So it's true," he sneered. The lonely rancher found himself a wild woman. Samuel's hand gripped the reins until his knuckles went white. He warned him off with a voice like steel, but in his gut, he knew the secret was already spilling into the town's eager mouths. That evening, Nayeli saw the tension in Samuel's shoulders and asked what had happened. He told her of the boy's discovery, and for the first time, she looked unsettled. "They will not stop now," she said. "They will come to test you, to test me. You must decide, will you stand against them, or will you hand me over when the pressure grows too heavy?" Samuel bristled at her words. "I would never hand you over," he said sharply. "This is my home, and now it is yours too." But inside, he wondered if he truly had the strength to face the storm alone. Could one man shield her against an entire town bent on suspicion and hate? The storm came sooner than either of them expected. 3 riders appeared at the ranch the next afternoon, their dust cloud announcing their intent before their words did. Samuel stepped outside, his rifle resting in his hands though not yet raised. The men sneered, their eyes darting past him, searching for the figure they had heard about. "Word as you've taken in a squaw," one of them spat. "You know that won't stand, Sam. You'll bring trouble down on all of us." Samuel's chest tightened, but his voice was steady as he replied, "This is my land. What I do on it is my business." The men exchanged looks, their scowls deepening. "Careful," one warned, "you might find yourself run off your own property." Their words stung, but Samuel did not back down. When the riders finally left, the air felt heavier than before. Samuel returned inside, where Nayeli was waiting, her face calm though her hands betrayed a faint tremor. She told him that she was ready to leave if it would keep him safe. But Samuel shook his head fiercely. "You came here and asked to stay. I let you in because I wanted you here. If trouble comes, we'll face it together. I've lived alone too long to know what's worth fighting for, and now I do." Nayeli's eyes softened, and for the first time, Samuel felt her trust him completely. It was no longer about a rancher and a stranger. It was about 2 souls standing against a world that wanted to keep them apart. In the days that followed, Samuel prepared the ranch as though expecting a siege. He stocked firewood, filled barrels with water, and made sure his rifle was clean and ready. But as he worked, he noticed Nayeli moving alongside him, her quiet determination matching his own. She was no fragile guest, she was a partner, as willing to fight for her place as he was. Together, they moved through the routines of survival, and in those small acts, Samuel found a strength he had not known he possessed. For the first time, he believed they might truly withstand the storm.